Welcome to My Country, My America, and U.S. American Stories. The views and opinions expressed are ex-certive LLCs and are for entertainment enjoyment only. The source material used to make this podcast was from Bill Federer's American Minute. It is a wonderful source of material to learn about the United States and its history. Please see the show notes for more details on how to access Bill Federer's American Minute. Now, let's listen to a deep dive talking about just one of the many amazing topics discussed in the American Minute. Let's go.
Have you ever, made a promise that you weren't really sure you could keep?
Mhm.
A promise that maybe seemed impossible at the time?
Yeah, I think we all have.
What if that promise involved freedom for millions of people?
Wow.
Well, that's exactly the situation that President Lincoln found himself in during the fall of 1862.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what we're going to be diving into today.
Okay.
We're going to be looking at the Emancipation Proclamation,
The Emancipation Proclamation.
one of the most important documents in American history.
Absolutely.
But we're not just going to read it and be done with it.
Right.
We're going to try to really understand the context surrounding it. We're going to look at it from all sides and see how it fits into the bigger picture of the Civil War.
I'm excited.
All right, so to do that, we've got a really fascinating firsthand account from Lincoln's Treasury Secretary, Salmon P. Chase.
Okay.
And this account gives us a glimpse behind the scenes,
Oh, wow.
a look at the thinking that went into this world-changing decision.
Yeah.
So it's September 1862, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Civil War is raging on.
A very tumultuous time.
The nation is deeply divided.
Yeah.
And the Battle of Antietam, this brutal but very important Union victory, has just happened.
So a real turning point in the war.
Yeah, it really shifted the momentum.
Yes.
And Chase, in his account, he tells us that in the aftermath of Antietam, Lincoln felt that the time was right to finally issue this Emancipation Proclamation.
Interesting.
He believed that public opinion, you know what I mean, like the feelings of the people, had shifted enough to support such a bold move.
Well, he was a shrewd politician.
Yeah.
You know, he really understood the importance of timing
Yes, he did.
and public opinion in making such a monumental decision.
Yeah, and you're right. Lincoln was a master of understanding the political landscape.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that emancipation couldn't just be like this moral imperative.
Right.
It had to be strategic, too.
Yes.
It had to make sense politically. So by waiting for a Union victory, he ensured that the proclamation would be seen as a position of strength,
Yes.
not desperation.
Right. Very strategic.
But there's another really interesting layer to this story.
Okay.
Chase also mentions that Lincoln had made a personal vow to God about emancipation. And we actually have Lincoln's own words to confirm this.
Oh, wow.
He wrote, and I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, but he basically said that he promised God that if the Confederates were driven back from Pennsylvania, he would issue the Emancipation Proclamation.
Fascinating.
And Antietam, which was fought in Maryland, was close enough to Pennsylvania
Yes.
to fulfill that promise.
So in Lincoln's mind, this wasn't just politics.
No.
This was a deep personal, spiritual obligation to act.
Yeah, it's almost like he felt this weight on his shoulders.
Yes.
This responsibility to follow through on what he had promised.
It really makes you think about the way personal convictions can influence political decisions. I mean, was this vow a way for Lincoln to kind of strengthen his own resolve? Or was it maybe a way to frame the issue for the public?
Yeah.
Adding this moral weight to his decision.
That's a really good point because, like we said before, he was a brilliant communicator. He knew how to connect with people.
Absolutely.
But regardless of his motivations, the result was the Emancipation Proclamation.
Right.
On January 1st, 1863, Lincoln declared that all slaves in Confederate states are, and henceforth, shall be free.
Such powerful words.
I know, and when you read them, you can almost feel the weight of history behind them.
Yes.
The impact that they must have had on people at the time.
Absolutely.
But of course, like with any historical document, the proclamation wasn't without its limitations.
Right.
And it's important to remember that it only applied to states in rebellion.
So not to the slave states that remained in the Union.
Exactly.
And that raises some pretty tough ethical questions. Was this a necessary compromise? Was it a way to, maintain unity?
Right.
Or did it ultimately leave many enslaved people behind?
Well, and that's something that historians still debate today.
Yes.
But regardless of those limitations, the symbolic importance of the Emancipation Proclamation can't be overstated.
Oh, absolutely.
It fundamentally changed the nature of the war.
Mm-hmm.
It was no longer just about preserving the Union.
Yeah.
It was about ending slavery.
It reframed the entire conflict.
Absolutely. And that shift had huge ripple effects.
Yes.
I mean, it energized the abolitionist movement.
Mm-hmm.
It garnered support from European countries who opposed slavery.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it paved the way for the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery in the United States for good.
Amazing how one document can have such far-reaching consequences.
I know, it's incredible. And even in the document itself, Lincoln ends the proclamation with this appeal to God.
Okay.
Almost like he's asking for his blessing on this act. And it really seems like that personal conviction we talked about earlier, the promise to God.
Yes.
It's woven throughout the entire document.
It shows how he really tied the issue of slavery to a higher moral purpose.
Right.
Which obviously resonated with a lot of people at the time.
Yeah.
And continues to resonate with us today.
It's really incredible to think that one decision, right?
Yeah.
Born out of personal conviction, political strategy, and maybe even, like divine inspiration, could have such a profound impact on the course of history.
It's a powerful example of how individual actions can shape the world.
They really can.
Yeah.
But like with all things historical, the story doesn't end there.
Oh, of course not.
The Emancipation Proclamation was issued during the war.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened to the newly freed slaves after the fighting stopped? How did the nation really grapple with the legacy of slavery in the decades that followed?
Such an important question.
Yeah, and these are things that we're not going to have time to go into today, but they're definitely worth thinking about.
I agree.
This deep dive has really just scratched the surface, and there's so much more to discover about the complexities and lasting impact of the Emancipation Proclamation.
And that's the beauty of history.
Yeah.
There's always more to learn.
Always more to explore.
Exactly.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
And we hope you'll continue to explore this fascinating story on your own.
Yes, keep learning.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive into the past.